She never expected that opening her door at 5:30 a.m. would alter the course of her life forever. But as Margaret stood there in her faded robe, staring at the stranger who wasn't their regular milkman, something shifted in the universe, something neither of them could have predicted. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected connection and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt narratives that remind us how life can change in a single moment. Margaret Winters had perfected the art of invisibility. At 42, she moved through her suburban home like a ghost, dusting surfaces that didn't need dusting, rearranging flowers in vases, and preparing meals that her husband Thomas barely acknowledged before disappearing into his study. Their son Michael was away at college now, and the house echoed with a silence that seemed to grow louder each day. Every morning followed the same routine. She would wake at 5:15 a.m., put on her robe, start the coffee, and wait by the kitchen window for the milk delivery. It was the one constant in her life, the gentle clink of glass bottles being placed in the metal carrier on her porch. Sometimes, she would wave to old Mr. Peterson, who had been delivering milk to their neighborhood for over 30 years. He would tip his hat and continue on his route. But on this particular Tuesday in April, it wasn't Mr. Peterson who appeared on her doorstep. Instead, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes stood there, holding the familiar wire basket of milk bottles. "Good morning," he said, his voice deep and warm. "I'm Daniel." Mr. Peterson had to retire suddenly, his arthritis finally got the better of him. "I'll be taking over his route." Margaret nodded, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance. "Oh, I see. I hope he's all right." "He's managing. Asked me to give his regulars his best." Daniel smiled, and Margaret noticed the crinkles around his eyes. "You must be Mrs. Winters. Pete told me you're always up early." "Margaret," she corrected automatically. "Yes, I've always been an early riser." There was something about the way he looked at her, really looked at her, that made Margaret feel seen for the first time in years. Not as a wife or a mother or a housekeeper, but as a person. "Well, Margaret, it's nice to meet you. See you tomorrow morning." As he walked away, Margaret stood in the doorway longer than necessary, watching his retreating figure. Something about this brief interaction left her feeling strangely unsettled, as if someone had rearranged her furniture in the night. The next morning, Margaret found herself taking extra care with her appearance before the milk delivery. She brushed her hair, which she usually left untamed until after breakfast, and changed from her old flannel robe to the blue silk one that had been a Christmas gift from Michael 3 years ago. When Daniel arrived, he noticed. "That's a lovely color on you," he said as he handed her the milk. "Brings out your eyes." Margaret blushed, feeling foolish. "Thank you. Would you like some coffee? It must be cold out there." The invitation surprised them both. In 30 years, Mr. Peterson had never been invited inside. Daniel hesitated, then checked his watch. "I have a few minutes before I need to hit the next street." "Coffee sounds wonderful." And just like that, a tradition began. Every morning, Daniel would arrive with the milk, and Margaret would have coffee waiting. They would sit at her kitchen table for exactly 7 minutes, all the time he could spare before continuing his route, and talk. At first, their conversations were superficial. The weather, neighborhood news, the rising cost of dairy. But gradually, they began to share more. Daniel was a widower, his wife having passed from cancer 5 years earlier. He had taken the milk route after retiring early from his job as a high school English teacher. "I couldn't stand the silence of my empty house," he confessed one morning. "Needed to be out in the world, seeing people, even if just for a moment each day." Margaret understood that feeling all too well. "Sometimes I talk to the plants," she admitted. "Just to hear a voice in this house." "Your husband works long hours?" Margaret stared into her coffee. "Thomas is, present but absent, if that makes sense. Has been for years." Daniel didn't pry, but his eyes held understanding. Sometimes the loneliest place to be is right next to someone who doesn't see you." His words hit Margaret with such force that she nearly spilled her coffee. How had this man, practically a stranger, managed to articulate what she had been feeling for so long? As weeks turned into months, their 7-minute conversations became the highlight of Margaret's day. She found herself sharing things she had never told anyone, her abandoned dreams of becoming a botanist, her fear that she had disappeared into her roles as wife and mother, her growing sense that life was passing her by. Daniel listened. Really listened. And he shared too, his passion for poetry, his regrets about not having children, his struggle to find purpose after losing his wife. "You know," he said one morning in June, "there's a community garden project starting at the elementary school. They're looking for volunteers with knowledge of plants. I immediately thought of you." Margaret laughed nervously. "Oh, I couldn't. It's been years since I've done anything like that." "Why not? You light up when you talk about plants, Margaret. The way you describe the orchid propagation you did in college, it's like watching someone come alive." That afternoon, after Thomas left for work, Margaret found herself driving to the elementary school. Before she could lose her nerve, she walked into the office and asked about the garden project. By the time she left, she had signed up for 2 afternoons a week. When she told Daniel the next morning, his smile was radiant. "I knew you would do it. The children are lucky to have you." The community garden became Margaret's sanctuary. Working with the earth, teaching children about plant life, watching seeds transform into seedlings, it awakened something in her that had been dormant for decades. She came home with dirt under her fingernails and stories to tell, though Thomas showed little interest. "You smell like compost," was his only comment when she returned from her first day. But Daniel wanted to hear everything. Their 7 minutes stretched to 10, then 15. He would rearrange his route to make time for their conversations, and Margaret found herself setting her alarm earlier and earlier. "You should see the children's faces when the sunflowers started blooming," she told him one morning. "There's this little girl, Emma, who was so shy at first. Now she's appointed herself the official sunflower guardian." Daniel smiled. "You've found your calling." "It's just volunteering," Margaret demurred. "It's more than that. You're changing lives, those children's and your own." As summer turned to fall, Margaret's transformation continued. She enrolled in a botany course at the community college. She joined a book club. She started wearing colors again, after years of beige and gray. The woman who had been fading into the background of her own life was stepping into the foreground. Thomas noticed, in his way. "You're out a lot these days," he remarked one evening, not looking up from his newspaper. "Yes," Margaret replied simply. She waited for him to ask more, to show interest in what she was doing, but he merely turned the page. That night, lying awake beside her sleeping husband, Margaret confronted a truth she had been avoiding: her marriage had died years ago. They were two strangers sharing a house, going through the motions of a relationship that existed only in memory. The realization should have devastated her, but instead, it brought a strange clarity. The next morning, she told Daniel. "I think I need to leave him," she said quietly, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug. Daniel was silent for a long moment. "Are you sure?" "I've been leaving for years," Margaret replied. "Just not physically." He nodded, understanding. "What will you do?" "I don't know yet. But I need to find out who I am without him." Margaret shook her head. "Never. A year ago, I thought my life was over. Now I realize it was just beginning." That evening, as they walked through the quiet nursery after everyone had left, Daniel stopped beside a particularly beautiful white orchid. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Margaret," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, "meeting you changed everything for me. I was just going through the motions, delivering milk, marking time. Then you invited me in for coffee, and suddenly, I had something to look forward to every day. Margaret's heart raced as he opened the box to reveal a simple silver ring set with a small diamond. "I'm not asking you to rush into anything," Daniel continued. "We can take all the time you need. But I want you to know that I love you, and whenever you're ready, I would be honored to share my life with you." Tears filled Margaret's eyes as she looked at the man before her, the milkman who had seen her when she was invisible, who had believed in her when she had forgotten how to believe in herself. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm ready now." They were married in the community garden the following spring, surrounded by blooming flowers and the children Margaret had taught, who scattered petals along the path. Michael walked his mother down the aisle, and even Thomas attended, offering genuine congratulations to the couple. As they exchanged vows beneath an arbor of climbing roses, Margaret thought about the strange and winding path that had led her here. How a simple change in routine, a new milkman on her doorstep, had set in motion a transformation she could never have imagined. Life didn't become perfect. There were still challenges and disagreements, moments of doubt and difficulty. But there was also partnership, genuine communication, and the profound joy of being truly seen and accepted. 5 years later, Margaret's nursery had expanded to include a botanical education center where she taught classes on plant propagation and conservation. Daniel had published a collection of poetry and continued his milk route, though now only part-time. They had built a life together based on mutual respect, shared interests, and deep affection. One morning, as they sat having coffee on their porch, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, Daniel reached for Margaret's hand. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if Mr. Peterson's arthritis hadn't flared up when it did?" he asked. Margaret smiled, squeezing his fingers. "I believe we would have found each other somehow. Some connections are meant to be. The universe conspiring to bring us together?" Daniel's eyes twinkled. "Something like that," Margaret replied. "Or maybe it's simpler. Maybe it's just about being open to possibility, to change, even when it arrives in unexpected packages. Like a milk delivery?" "Exactly like a milk delivery." As they sat in comfortable silence, Margaret reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a woman who had made herself small to accommodate others, to someone who had reclaimed her dreams and her voice. From a marriage of quiet desperation to a partnership of equals. From invisibility to being truly seen. All because she had opened her door one morning to a different milkman. Sometimes the most profound changes in our lives begin with the smallest shifts in our daily routines. Margaret's story reminds us that it's never too late to rediscover yourself, to pursue forgotten dreams, to find love and connection in unexpected places. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more tales of transformation, second chances, and the courage to begin again. Remember, your own life-changing moment might be waiting just outside your door tomorrow morning.